Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we wrap up the playthrough of Uprising: Curse of the Last Emperor from Nemesis Games in this finale video. Now, if you haven't checked out my unboxing video, my setup video, and chapter number 1, or part 1 of the playthrough, you'll definitely want to check those out before you dig into this video to have a better understanding of how we got to where we're at. Now, there is one major correction that I want to make before we move forward. It's going to impact scoring, and it all has to do with when we found the stone circle at a particular point in the gameplay in the last video, near the tail end of the video. I ended up putting 2 skeletons here when in actuality there was a garrison that was already present, and by my own mistake, when I was flipping over the tile, I placed the garrison off to the side and then forgot I actually had the garrison there in the first place. So then I put 2 skeletons there, as it states to do so once you flip the tile over on the tile itself. So those skeletons should not be there. What should be there is a garrison, and that will impact the scoring that we did at the tail end of the last video. So we'll just quickly adjust all those things right now. Now, looking way up at the score track, you're going to see the Chaos Horde scoring marker currently sitting on 9. Because we removed 2 skeletons that weren't supposed to be there, we actually counted them as 2 points when we tallied up the end of chapter number 1. So actually, they're going to be at 7. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, for the other enemy faction, the Imperial Legion, they're actually going to increase by 1 because they have a garrison in play. So it's kind of an interesting situation. We have one of the enemies running out in front of us a little bit further, but one of them actually falling back closer to where we're at. With that correction now out of the way, we move into the refresh phase, where we're going to reveal one new druid card. I'm going to go ahead and choose to reveal this one here in the bottom right-hand corner. Let's go ahead and see what we have. It is something that affects archery and clashes. Ignore all skulls showing on 1 die your enemy rolled. This actually sounds pretty awesome, but 4 damage and once per round. The next step in the refresh phase is to flip all your face down cards back to face up. So we got them all face up here. We had a number of these cards face down, not only due to using them, and if the card, the actual feat itself, let's say, states that you need to flip it over after using it, then you should do so. Otherwise, you don't have to flip it over. But there are some game effects, like on the Coven, where if a bolt is rolled, it could affect you by having all your items and feats flipped over, which is exactly what happened to poor Sindra here, and everything here was all flipped over and capped from being used. So as we move forward now, we have everything available going into chapter 2. Next step is really simple. All of the action points that we have go back to the pool. Now, we currently only have 7. If you remember, the Coven was the one that's holding 1 action point from both of my factions still, and will remain to hold on to those action points until we take it out. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get those back fast enough to be able to use them in chapter number 2. So I'm going to basically, in essence, by the end of this playthrough, have been capped to 7 actions in both chapters thanks to the Coven. I really want to get revenge on them for that. So the regaining of these action points not only happen for Sindra, but also my red faction I'm controlling as well. Another exciting thing that changes during the refresh phase is that you get all new items. So all 3 of these market items are going to be discarded. 3 new cards coming out. Here's a look at the 3 new items, at least straight on, so you can actually read them prior to me placing them in the market area. And it's also not just the items that get refreshed, the quests do as well. So these 3 will be discarded and 3 new ones coming out. Here's a look at the 3 quests we have now available going into chapter 2. The last step of the refresh phase is to simply take the first player token, pass it to the left. In this case, it's on the red faction now. We're now heading into the event phase, where the very first thing we do, which we actually get to do this time around, is to add 2 threat to all legions and hordes in play. Currently, that's only the Coven, so that is going to increase the Coven's threat, making him even more painful to deal with. So he currently sits at 3 threat. He's going to be jumping up to 5, making him quite a bit more miserable to deal with. At this point now, the first player is going to draw and read the next event for the chapter. Now, just before we go any further, there is something else that I just noticed, and that is the fact that at the very tail end of chapter number 1, a curse was laid right where a current garrison is on the sea tower. And when that happens, when a curse lands on a location that has a garrison, it's going to destroy that entire garrison, and it's going to put that into its graveyard. So when I was calculating points up for the Chaos Graveyard, both of my factions were inside of it, which gives it 2 VP for both factions each. But because there should have also been a garrison destroyed, that level 3 one there you're seeing on the left should also be additional 2 points for the Chaos faction. But that's going to reduce the Imperial Legion by 1. So it's going to be kind of funny, but they're going to both end up on 9. So what is quite comical about this whole thing is those 2 major changes, the one at the very beginning of the video and the one I just did right now, that both impacted scoring, had us end up landing at the exact same score we had at the beginning of the video. All right, so we'll just go from here. The other thing I want to mention is that the graveyards have also been emptied out and should be emptied out at the end of a chapter. Now, you might have noticed at the very beginning of the video, there's a bunch of units still in the graveyard from the prior chapter 1 play that I did. I've removed them out of the graveyard, so there's no worry about me duplicating counts or anything like that when we get to the end of this chapter number 2. But I also just kind of keeping an eye out for any of these misses within the gameplay, because sometimes they're easy to miss because of the fact that you've got multiple colors, multiple units in certain locations, and some of them have kind of triggering abilities or effects that happen the second they land in those locations, like the curses, for instance. So glad I was able to clean that up, especially with one of my heroes sitting literally inside that hex. So with that out of the way, let's move to the Chapter 2 event card, which says every player may pay 3 resources to place the top card of their feat deck here. If your feat is here, you can use a bolt on a hex with a curse. I can't see why not. Let's give it a shot. We'll put both of the feat cards there. Next up, it says that the Imperial Inquisition claims to have brought peace and hunt those heretics who defy the Empire. We're going to place 3 garrisons on any one hex with no X, empty if possible. Then we're going to place 1 legion at threat 5 on any sea tower, empty if possible, and place its target on the capital, and then place a horde at threat 5 on any hex with no X, empty if possible. We got lots to do. I've gone ahead and placed a level 3 garrison on this hex right here, which is very close to the action, with no X on it, and it was empty, so this satisfied all the criteria. Now we're going to go ahead and place a legion at threat 5 on any sea tower. The top card of the Imperial Legion deck was the Spy Master. We're going to go ahead and resolve the immediate effect in just a moment. First, we need to make sure we place it on a sea tower, and it needs to be empty if possible, and we actually do have an empty one, and it's unexplored. So we'll go ahead and place the Spy Master down the bottom right-hand corner of the board where the unexplored sea tower sits. And it's also worth mentioning when placing the card for the Imperial Legion in the row, make sure you're placing it left to right, lowest initiative to highest initiative. You'll notice it's an 8 on the left and a 9 on the right. With the Spy Master now in position, let's take a look at the immediate effect. It says to place his target. We know his target based on the event card is going to be the capital. I will place a token for that momentarily. The immediate effect also says to flip the most expensive items on the market. They are not discarded until the Spy Master is destroyed. So we're going to take a look at how much it costs mana-wise and hopefully hope that there's not too many at a high price point that are the same price point, because he's going to be blocking those all up. So in this case, taking a look at the market here and the salt cost for each of these items, you'll see 1, 2, and 1. The most expensive one is valued at 2. Thank goodness we don't have multiples at the 2 level, which would be the most expensive because we'd be flipping multiple cards. We just got lucky, so we're going to flip over the mask. So again, not discarded. If we take out the Spy Master, his network goes down and we can have access to that item to buy it from the market if we wish. The last thing we need to do on this event card is to place 1 horde at threat 5, which is actually literally the maximum of the Banished who has come out. And this is going to go on any hex with no X, empty if possible. You'll also notice on the game board, and I haven't placed the Banished just yet, but I did place the marker here for the Spy Master on the capital as it told me to do so. On the event card, the Banished is coming into play, and literally the only empty hex that doesn't have an X is up there in the top right-hand corner, so that's exactly where the Banished is going. So at this point in the play, we have literally every hex of the central area completely full with some kind of unit from some kind of faction. It's gotten pretty interesting. The last step of the event phase is to place 1 activation token on every Horde and Legion card. But when you're on the last chapter of your play, like I am right now, it's actually 2 activation markers per card. We're now heading into the build phase where we draw 2 feats like we did in chapter number 1. We keep one, place the other one at the bottom of the deck, and then we get to go ahead and build units, towers, and walls starting with the first player. Now for my red faction here, I have an archery and clash card that says flip this to lose 1 skull and gain 1 bolt, or I have something that I actually didn't get at all during chapter number 1 if memory serves, which is the ability to boost a stat on my hero, which can absolutely come in handy, especially when dealing with quests. This can boost how many dice you had roll. Plus, you get the additional benefit if you choose this to gain 3 resources of your choosing, which can be very handy right now going into, well, we're inside the build phase right now, so I can really set myself up to build the units I really want to have. So I'm going to probably go with that stat one right now. For the red faction, I chose to take Guile. I've placed it underneath of my hero card, so it's going to boost a die for me. I get to choose between white or orange when I roll for that. Also, the 3 resources, in terms of gaining those, I chose to take all salt. So I added 3 to the pile of salt I already have over there. And the 1 feat card I didn't choose went to the bottom of my feat deck. All right, Sindra, what do you have here? So we got the Archery and Clash card here. It says, if your enemy has more units or threat here, gain a blue die before rolling once per round. That's actually pretty good. Oh man, that's tough. That's really tough. Oh, it's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good one. I do like the stat boost though, because it comes with the resource gain, and that's really, really handy right now going to the build phase at the end of the game, I think. Even though that benefit during attacks could be awesome. And it's not only clashes, but also the ranged. That's so hard. I think I might go for stats for both of these. And I think for this one, I might go with a magic bump of 1, and we'll take 3 resources just to figure out what I want. For Sindra, she has bumped up her magic by 1, giving her 4 purple dice now when she goes into roll, plus the Guile one that she already had. The feat I didn't choose went to the bottom, and in terms of resources, I chose to take 3 salt. So now we move into the build phase where I've prepared the units that I want to purchase. I've gone ahead and placed the resources I'm going to spend just above the columns where those units reside. So for instance here with tower defenses and wall defenses, I'm going to pay 1 plunder apiece to put both of those on my home haven. As I've got some, well, actually in both of the factions I'm controlling's case, we have some enemies just next door. So getting some defenses up is definitely a good idea. Also, you'll notice some of these units are turned vertical. That's just to show you which ones I'm building, and the resources I'm going to spend are just above them. So 2 Vargs here. I'm really looking forward to using this feat in the future, where if you have 2+ Vargs here, you gain an orange die when rolling, so that's pretty cool. This one here is 2 archers, so we're glad to add those to the fray, and we're going to pick up 2 tribesmen to make a total tally of 5 units coming in at the home haven. So currently the red faction's home looks like this. You can see there's enemies all around us. It's a good time to kind of build things up and get ready for some war. So here we go. Everything's bolstered up, and it's worth mentioning in the prior shot, it looked like I had 6 units because I had turned an extra tribesman by accident, and I was going to pay an additional food resource to do so. So taking that 1 food resource back, and this unit will not be placed with the rest of them. So just to clarify that, only 5 units coming out, as that is the maximum I can have on my home haven currently. I don't have any other havens to place units at this point. Now, what I love about upgrading the haven itself is the visual representation of the tower defense and wall defense that gets placed there, so you can literally see those defenses on the player board. A white die you get when defending with the tower, and a blue die for the wall defenses. So that's really going to help in situations where, let's say, I move out of my home haven, take most of my units, I still have some type of defense there, especially when I'm completely surrounded by the Chaos Horde. And just to clear up a couple other things around walls and towers, which you might see pan out during playthrough here, is if the haven's removed, the wall and the tower go with it. Walls and towers do not take damage from skulls on die rolls from the enemy. Towers are going to give you a white die, as I mentioned, in archery and clash rounds if you have any of your units on that hex. So that's really important to remember. If you just clear out with all your units and leave your haven there undefended in terms of having any units there, then it's basically just a cakewalk for the enemy to walk in, regardless of having the tower and wall defenses. Walls are going to give you a blue die, as I mentioned, only in clash rounds though, if again you have any of your units on that hex. Now heading over here to Sindra, I've gone ahead and done the exact same thing I did before, this time making sure I've only turned over 5 units that I'm purchasing, because that's all that can fit on the 1 hex of my home for this white faction. I've also placed all the resources I need to spend up top across the columns, and again I'll also be putting tower and wall defenses up for this home haven. And just like that, our white faction's home hex is just And just like that, our white faction's haven is a little bit more ready, as well as having a whole bunch of nice, powerful units around it. The very first action I'm going to take is a move action with my red faction leader. He's currently on a sea tower, and when you're on a sea tower, you're considered adjacent to all other hexes, meaning I can plot myself wherever I want strategically. So as you can see, based on the layout of things here and all of the units that I now have on my home haven that really want to go into that space with the banished and take it down, because there is a good reward on that card for 3 VP that I really want to go after to boost up the red faction. So what I'm going to do is right now move my hero from the sea tower right to the unexplored space where the banished is, and from that point I'm going to choose to explore. Now what's awesome about this is the fact that I was able to get him from where he was all the way over there with just one move action, which didn't end my current turn. I was able to use another action to explore, and we found a tavern. Let's go ahead and find out what happens. The tavern here states that we're going to gain 3 food. I'm going to be happy to do that. It also says if empty, place a garrison. It's not empty. The hero again doesn't count as being part of the empty equation, but the banished character that's there definitely does. So because it's not empty, we're going to reinforce instead, which will bring 1 skeleton into the hex. So a skeleton has added its die into the fray here, and next up it says to take a quest action for 0 action points, which is awesome. We also get a die, a blue die added into the fray for free, and it says if you fail, ignore any failure requests. So a great one all the way around. Now, if you're wondering, this is a marshes location, so there are some terrain effects if we get ourselves into a battle, but let's go ahead and resolve that free quest right now. Now, this is an absolutely awesome example of how once you get to chapter number 2, the quests that you choose to go after have a massive, pull on your strategic choices inside the game. I mean, not only during the actions phase, you're deciding what you're going to do and trying to plan out how you're going to use your action points, but these quests have benefits that can really tilt the battles, tilt your plan strategically in your favor if you go after the right ones. Now, what is right, that's up to you to decide. That's kind of part of the fun. With this one here, it would really help me out on the VP front if I could nail those quick bonuses there. As long as the dies, in terms of what I'm using for my roll, line up with the chance to hit those bonuses, that could be really nice. And getting an extra feat for solving it sounds good. This one's more resource-based, and I don't really have too much excitement over the bonuses on that one, so I'm not really looking at it. But this last one here, it really could be awesome, and the reason for that is you get the ability to get the VP here, which I think I can get the skulls I need with all the dice I'll be rolling here, so I'm not concerned there. The best part about this card is that when you take it, if you're in combat on a marsh space, or hex I should say, you're going to get a blue die added in on your clash, which is it's almost like having an extra unit that you didn't have before. That's pretty awesome. And if you take a look right here, it says if your hero's on a marsh hex, you gain a red. So we're gaining an additional red just by trying this on top of it. Now you also have those bonuses across these ones too. If you're in a marsh space for this one down here, you get a purple sea tower for this one. But I really like that one furthest away. And just so you can understand how many dice I'm actually adding into this pool based on everything that I have I can make use of, is I'm getting the bonus red die down here because I'm taking this quest and I'm on a marsh space, so that's one of them. The other red one's coming from this eye patch I picked up earlier, which is for all rolls outside of combat, which this is. And then I've got this blue die that came from the actual hex itself. So just out of the gates alone, I already have 3 dice. Now I'm going to add my heroes pool in, which is 3 red, a blue, and I just got to choose whether I want a white or an orange. So in the end, this ends up being my quest roll, which is pretty insane. So we're gonna go ahead now and grab all of these, and you can see that eye patch is an always effect. So I'm gonna be able to use that every single time I make a roll outside of combat. Let's see if we can get the 3 skulls. I got a pretty good feeling about this. Oh my gosh, tons. So we absolutely solved this. We only needed to meet one of these 3 criteria to solve, so we nailed that beyond belief. We get the VP, so we're gonna go ahead and bump ourselves up from 6 to 7. We get to take the card, and when we do a combat, which I plan to in the future on the marsh against the banished, I'm gonna get an extra blue die. Now moving over to the white faction, where I feel a little bit more unsure as to how we can gain some VP, being that we're very low on resources. I think questing is a good idea, and that middle quest that had to do with resources, I think we need to have Sindra go after that. So I'm going into this roll with 4 purple dice, and I chose for my guile where I can pick orange or white. I went with white mainly because they're shields, and that will allow me to draw a new quest if I happen to land it. So here we go, hoping for good things. Need to succeed at least one of these 3 checks to solve it, and hoping I can pull a new quest on top of it and gain some good resources. We also want to see a ton of bolts because that'll allow me to get a lot of resources. So here we go. Oh, not a ton at all. So we're going to end up having enough skulls, thank goodness, to satisfy this one here, which is 1. So that's good. We don't get any bonus for it though, unfortunately. And then we didn't hit the shields. We did hit the bolts though, so you can discard any items from the market. So we could actually take even the item that was flipped over face down, we could just toss it, which actually wouldn't be a bad idea because as soon as one leaves, it gets replenished. So we actually might do that. I think I'll toss that, and I'll look at the other items to see if there's other ones we really don't need right now for the white faction, and maybe get some new ones in. And it says items, so it's any number of them. But let's do this first. So we're gonna gain 2 resources. I gotta figure out what those are. I'm gonna choose to go with a plunder and a food. This is gonna allow me to be able to build a haven at some point and also command once. I'm gonna go ahead and choose to discard the item that's flipped down and the leaves. I ended up getting a Runestones card. It's an always pay 2 resources to add a skull, shield, or a bolt to any player's roll outside of combat, or the Blackfire card Archery, pay 1 salt to gain 1 white die. We're now heading back over to the red faction, and we are absolutely using an action point just off screen here in order to command, and I have, just so you know, 7 food, so I'm just spending 1 to make that command action happen. So all those units, I have to decide how many of them I want to move out of that space and into the space with the Banished. I've decided to move every single unit I have into the Hex with the Banished, as well as the Skeleton, and something worth noting you probably already noticed if you're listening, the audio has changed. I've actually downgraded my audio as I had an issue with the enhanced audio I've been using. I'm going to have to work through that, so bear with me. We're using the old school audio going forward. Now, in going into a battle, which initiates right now, we take a look at the game board and it states skeletons and garrisons are handled separately before any legions or hordes, regardless of the fact that the skeleton and the Banished are part of the same faction. We fight the skeleton first, and a single skeleton is going to hit us in the clash phase, but thankfully we have some archers first. On top of the 2 white dice I get for the 2 archers I also have a feat card for the red faction. In the archery phase, I can use it. It says if you have 2+ Vargs here, which I do, then I gain an orange die into this phase of combat, which is awesome. So we're going to be rolling these 3 dice, and maybe we could just kill it off before it even gets a chance to attack us. All right, let's see how this roll pans out for us. Oh, we got just enough. So that skeleton is going to be killed, and we gain 1 VP right away. And now we're going to be fighting the Banished. You can see the VP tracker way up there for red is getting closer and closer to our enemies, which is great. But this Banished is ready to fight. The dice pool's been assembled, 2 blue dice for a ranged combat here. We're gonna go ahead and roll it for the enemy. We typically roll all these at the same time because I'm playing solo. I'll do them separately. We got 2 skulls, that is not good for me. And then I've got the 1 extra for the Vargs and 2 for my ranged units. Hopefully I get a good result. Oh, that is a huge roll. So for me, I'm going to choose to lose my Tribesman, which is going to end up going into the Chaos Graveyard. And I only lost 1 because I have a shield, which was able to block the other hit that would have come through. But I have 3 hits going up against the Banished, which drops it from 5 down to 2, which is a massive drop. All right, we're ready to jump into a clash now. I've gone ahead and assembled the dice pools. They're not perfectly set up just yet, but that's just because we've maxed out our white dice. Remember, we're fighting in a marsh, so reds turn to white. So essentially, when I was converting my dice pool, my 2 Vargs, which would have given me 2 reds, they turned to white. So that's 2 of the whites. The other 2 whites should come from the ranged units or the archery units. I don't have enough because I still need to roll for the Banished as well. Don't worry, we will take 1 of the white die after we roll it and move it up to my pool. Also, you'll notice the ally card that I've got up there because of the wonderful quest I did earlier in this chapter, which gives me the ability to roll a blue die during a clash. And this is a nice little advantage. Now, the Banished is hurting pretty bad, and in the clash round gets a red and white, but as we know, reds turn to white in the marsh, so that affects them as well. So 2 white dice. Let's go ahead and roll the Banished and see how it goes. Kind of hoping that it's a bad roll for the Banished, but it does have an interesting reroll ability that you'll see in a second here. Oh yeah, look at that. So it definitely got his 2 whites. I was actually kind of expecting it to get blanks because there's a lot of blanks on these white dice, so I got a really good roll in the last one. But it says here, reroll 1 blank for every revealed druid once per round. So there literally is 2 druids revealed, so we're going to re-roll both of these for the enemy, which is really unfortunate for me. So hopefully more blanks. Nope, a whole bunch of defense it pulls out this time. Wow. Okay, well that's going to be fun. Let's go ahead and see how we do. I need lots of skulls. I need to get through that defense. At least I'm not taking any hits, so this clash could be going on for a bit. All right, so we got a skull and a defense. This ends up being a complete wash for this round. Now you might be wondering, why didn't I roll 4 white dice? Well, that's because just looking at all the icons and what will happen from them, the only one that would have helped me in this situation would have been a bolt, and white dice don't have bolts. If I had got a skull, it would have been blocked by one of the shields from the Banished, and if I had got a shield, that would have blocked nothing, and then a blank would have been nothing. So in this case, no point in even rolling that extra one, but we're still continuing with clash rounds, and that ability that the Banished has continues every single combat round. So every time it's going to roll blanks, it's going to continue to re-roll, which is is a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and roll this. I really want to kill this guy off because there's so much VP behind it if I can do it. All right, here we go. We got an opening. It's only doing one hit to us. Maybe we can defend and maybe we can squeak out the kill. Let's see how this goes. Of course, I do actually technically have to roll that white die. Should do that before I go any further. Oh my gosh, okay. And then technically we know it's 2 hits, so let's take that die, add it to our pool, and we're gonna roll this now and see how we do. What? That's incredible. 3 hits, 2 defense. We block the 2 hits that came to us, and the 3 hits is far more than enough to kill off the Banished. With the Banished now destroyed, I'll be removing the standee from play. We're also going to be gaining 3 VP for the red faction, which is going to have them hop straight over top of both of the enemy factions, which is one of the major reasons why I was going after this. Once per game, place this card at the bottom of the Horde deck. So this is going right to the bottom. So this turn, as I had strategically planned, ended up being really productive. We were able to jump right over top of 2 of the enemy factions, take out one of the Horde characters, clearing up a hex for a future haven to get additional points. We could even go after those skeletons if we wish to try to kill them off for VP. There's garrisons around us we could go after. We do have options and we still have 4 actions left, but at this point, after commanding into that region, we now jump over to the white faction. Now, just before we go to the white faction, let's activate this card here called Pillage. After combat, if you have 1 or more units here, gain 2 resources on your hero's hex, and I definitely do. So we're getting 2 more resources. For the white faction, I'm going to choose to quest again. There is a quest in there that could potentially give us some quick VP if we do well. Going into this quest, Instruction of the Druids, we've got 3 magic plus the 1 stat boost, which is 4 purple dice, and then I have 1 white die, which I chose for my Guile because it has the ability to get shields. The purple dice can get me skulls and bolts, so we're set across the board here. We just need to succeed at 2 of the 3 checks, and of course those bonuses are sitting underneath as well. And also we're not in a march, so we don't get that extra purple die, unfortunately. That would have been sweet, but I don't want to burn the action. Oh, did we get, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, we got the entire perfect roll, 4, a bolt, and a shield. Well, when you get magic rolls like that, you're going to have the chance to get some serious rewards. We're going to bump our VP in a second by 2, but first, we gain any one of our feats. I get to pick one, so I took my entire deck, laid them out. We're going to pick one. Once we do, then the rest are going to be shuffled back into a pile. Now, taking a look across them, there's a few that popped out, but honestly, the one that really, I think, is going to give me the best bang for buck is going to be this one for the Clash, where I can pay 1 salt to turn any one of my dice to show a single hit. This is going to come in huge later on because I know full well that the Coven's main target is going to be my home haven for the white faction, and there's going to be a big time battle there, and my defenses as well as my units are going to need as many dice as possible hitting skulls to knock the Coven, which is at a current threat level of 5, down to 0 in order to get a potential bonus of 4 VP. So we are going to get ourselves ready for that. The white faction also bumps up by 2 VP to 6. We're getting a little bit closer to those enemy factions. Now for the red faction, I'm going to decide to go ahead and build a haven. I mean, why not? We cleared that out last time. We're going to go ahead and pay 3 plunder in order to place a haven in the current location we're in. Now this is really great because dropping a haven down is going to give me some end of chapter scoring, which is going to be huge. For the white faction's turn, I'm going to go ahead and command, and this is going to cost me the only food I have for the white faction, but it's going to be worthwhile to move some units in and try to take down a garrison. I'm going to choose to go ahead and bring every single unit from my home hex into the level 1 location with my hero. And just like that, we're going to begin a battle. Archery is the first phase, and I don't have any feats or anything I can add into this, but there is a terrain effect that will matter here, and that is we're in the woods terrain type, which allows us to reroll up to 2 dice. So if we get any blanks or essentially get anything we don't want, we can reroll. The other thing worth mentioning is that the Nemesis does get to take advantage of this, just like other terrain effects. However, with the Nemesis, they're only going to reroll blanks. So here we go. Let's roll for the Nemesis first. And just so you know, it's re-rolling up to 2 dice. So basically, I could re-roll that one if I needed to for the Nemesis because it's just 1 die. But yeah, that's a hit. So it's going to stick with that. Let's hope we get some defense on our roll. And if we don't, we're going to hope to be able to re-roll to get some. Oh my gosh, that's a crazy roll. I'm okay, cool. So the white faction is going to jump up by 1 VP on the track. Red faction is up next. The hero and the units really want to get moving. I'm going to aim to get over to those skeletons. Now, I was tempted to go after some of the garrisons, but if you've played the game extensively, some things to note is that, especially if I went into a level 3 battle, although it could yield me some good VP there, there's a little more danger around that because we don't know what's on the other side of that unexplored tile underneath of it. It could be something that ends up bolstering garrisons, and if it does, and there's a level 3 garrison there, then it actually pushes AP for the red faction, which would be bad for us. We don't really want to see them get out any further ahead on purpose. So if I can go ahead and command myself to my haven and then command myself into the spot with 2 skeletons, I should surely be able to take those out, giving me 2 VP, which should be very helpful. And just like that, all of my units are back at the Haven. I do have plans strategically with my last 2 actions to do a bunch of commanding in order to try and go after not only the 2 skeletons from the Legion to the left, but there's also one hiding there up north, which I could split my units up to go after all of them. We're moving over to the white faction now, and this is a great time to talk about the strategy that's involved in every single turn. I want to take you through some of my thoughts that are going through my head here. Now, I'm in a hex right now that I've cleared out. I'm ready to place a haven, or at least you think that would be the best decision potentially. And it could be a good decision, but maybe not the greatest. And the reason for that is if I place a haven here, and then it comes around to the Nemesis phase, what's going to happen is that Horde character, the Coven, is going to look at adjacent spaces that have a haven, and it's going to try to move into one that is no further away from the capital. So the interesting thing with that is I would have to split my units across 2 havens in a way that kind of forces the Coven to pick the one I want to go after, but then my units are depleted in terms of their defenses overall. I'm not rolling as much dice, and my chances of killing the Coven go way down. Now, why does that matter? Well, the Coven is actually going to net me 4 VP. Placing a Haven just nets me 2. So if I place the Haven and lose the battle, I don't get much. If I actually just focus on killing the Coven and being in the strongest possible position, I can almost guarantee 4 VP so long as the battle goes well. And the more dice, the better. So instead of dropping a Haven here, instead, I'm going to focus on getting some things from the market to make my life easier when I do fight the Coven by basically leaving just the home Haven available. I'm going to bring all my units back to the home base. It'll allow me to also use the defenses of the home haven in my rolls, which should really help to guarantee we can kill the Coven off at the end. So I've gone ahead and used 1 action for move, 1 action for command. That'll be a full turn for the white faction. I'm converting 3 salt into 1 food to be able to pay for the command. That is going to leave Singer with 1 salt and 2 plunder left, but now all our units are back at the home hex and ready for what will be quite the battle in the Nemesis phase. It's also worth mentioning there's other factors that can come into play in that kind of a decision, because potentially the hex I'm leaving could have the benefit of VP in and of itself. There's VP on certain hexes as well, that if you get yourself established there, you can gain VP that way. But in this case, seeing as the most VP outcome with the guaranteed win in a battle, and again, I don't know if I'm guaranteed to win, but my odds are so much better if I stay at my home haven and fight with those defenses on top of all my units. Now for the red faction, what I'm going to do is there's no real need to protect the home haven, as there's no giant characters that are going to come in and try to destroy my home haven. So from here, with my last 2 actions, I'm going to have the leader command units into the adjacent hexes in order to do battle against the skeletons and try to net more VP. Now, it might be hard to see there, but I moved 1 Varg further north, and I moved 1 of my Deadeyes, and that's what I've got in there with the skeleton. Now, in terms of what a curse does in terms of affecting a battle, which we're about to go ahead and do, is it stops me from using bolts. Now, something I just noticed was at the event phase, when I was resolving the event card for the chapter, it allowed me to place a feat card on it in order to then go ahead and be able to use bolts in a certain capacity. It literally said if your feat card is here, you can use bolts on a hex with a curse. However, I'm not 100% sure I spent the 3 resources. I think I just dropped the card there. So because of that, I'm going to choose to just kind of take those cards back to my deck with no gameplay impact, as if I never even put them there, because I don't believe I spent the resources when I dropped the cards there. And I don't think that's going to have a major impact on this battle anyway, but I don't want to give myself any unfair advantage. The good news is I do have an archer there, so I do get to roll 1 white die. I don't get any bonus for the Vargs because I've split them up now. So let's go ahead and roll. Hopefully we kill it before it even has a chance to hit us, and we do not. Do I have anything that can help me with a reroll? No. All right, we are definitely going to go into a clash now. All right, this might be a little bit more scary, so we're gonna go ahead and roll the red die for the skeleton here. Let's see what they get. Ah, good, a blank. Okay, come on, skulls, come on. Yeah, we got the bolt too. We don't even need it. Now, looking at the bolts, again, I can't use the druid cards because I'm in a cursed location, so we'll just ignore the bolts. But basically, the one hit's enough to kill off the skeleton there, so that's 1 VP. The white faction has 2 AP left. I've used one of them to go to the market, and the card way at the top is the one I want. I do have the Guile in order to obtain this card, and I'm going to pay 1 salt to grab it right now. So I have no salt and no food whatsoever for Syndra, but I have 2 plunder left. Now, we're taking a look at that top card. It says, actions, discard this. Every player places 1 basic unit on any of their havens. This is not going to help the white faction, as I've got a maxed out unit count on my home haven right now, and no other havens placed. But the reason I got it is it's going to bolster the amount of units on the red faction for their last AP, which can be used to help with the 2 skeletons I want to try to take out. Now, after nabbing that last card, the new one that came out is another one we could potentially grab. This one is in always. It says discard this to remove 1 activation token from any Legion or Horde card. That is phenomenal. That's really, really good. So we are probably going to be grabbing that on the next turn. That'll be the last VP for the white faction. So I pretty much got the last 2 actions here planned out. And during the white faction's turn, at any time, I can use an action on a card because it doesn't cost an AP. So I'm using this to discard it. I'm going to gain a basic unit for the red faction at the home haven. So moving into the red faction's turn, this actually gets really exciting because I got the additional unit thanks to Syndra's feat card that I just used, and I chose to take a tribesman on this home haven and place it there. You might be wondering, why didn't I choose a ranged character to help me kill off the skeletons faster? Keep an eye on the terrain you plan to move into. The Frosthold Pass is a Highlands location, and I can only use 1 ranged die there, so having additional archers is not going to really help in that 1 archer phase during this battle. So I'd rather go with a melee character for the clash, which is great. The other thing I have in my back pocket, which I've been waiting to use, is this bonfires card for the red faction. I can discard it to gain a basic unit on any of my havens for every horde and legion in play. Just like that, units in that hex have jumped up to 5. We've maxed out how many units can be there in 1 faction. The one thing to note, you might be thinking, hey, why don't you go to level 3 garrison? We don't have any more actions left to spend because, remember, in an unexplored area, I would have to spend 1 AP to move my hero there. I'd have to explore it, which would be another AP, and then I could command units into it. So I don't have enough to pull that off, even though my army is now bolstered. With my last AP, I'm simply going to go ahead, pay 1 food. We're going to command our units into the Frosthold Pass, and we're going to try and destroy those skeletons. And just like that, we are ready for a battle. Archers begin. For the archery phase, we do not have much going for us. We just have 1 white die, which is all we're allowed to roll there anyway. So let's hope for a hit. Let's see how we do. Oh, we got a shield. So a completely wasted effort there. Now we're going to move into a clash. So here are how things are currently sitting. So we're going to go ahead now and do some rolling for the clash. Let's roll the enemy's dice first for the 2 skeletons. Ooh, 2 hits and a bolt. That's pretty nasty. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and roll ours to see what we get. There we go. And just like that, the red faction has jumped ahead by 2 VP. You're probably wondering, well, what does the bolt do for the skeletons? If you can see, and you probably can't, up there in the top left-hand corner in very small writing, you can also see it on the opposite side of the game board, which is just off screen, the bottom right-hand corner of the game board. It says in the skeletons and garrisons section, a bolt rolled, you place 1 skeleton here after damage. 3 skeletons in 1 hex become 1 horde. So it's after damage. So thank goodness we were able to kill off the 2, so it would never convert into a horde anyway. We got our 2 VP. Now, the thing I missed the first time I did a battle up north there with the 1 skeleton is I have a feat card that if I have 1 or more units there, I gain 2 resources. So right now I'm going to go ahead and take 2 salt for the battle we got up top in the north, and also an additional 2 salt for the battle we just dealt with right here as well. And you really want to keep an eye on those kind of bonuses because you can convert resources to VP later on. Well, it's actually kind of funny, but I forgot the fact I don't have 2 salt for this last market action for Syndra the Witch. So because of that, I cannot do this market action because I couldn't pay the cost of any of the items to purchase. So instead, I'm just going to choose to use the action to trade, even though I'm not trading. Basically, I'm just burning this last action. We now head into the Nemesis phase. We take a look at the cards in the row, starting with the lowest initiative order. It's also worth mentioning these activation tokens have two sides, and I just kind of threw them on the cards without actually placing them on the cards based on which faction they're a part of. I cleared that up now. They look great. And when you go through this row in terms of activating during the Nemesis phase, you're going to activate based on the number of tokens fully before moving to the next card. So we're going to start with the Spy Master and do a double activation. Now I'm activating the Spy Master right now, and I just realized something that was on the card that I missed. It's definitely worth mentioning, and it's part of the major ability of the Spy Master, which I might have taken advantage of by being able to discard the flip down face card that I did from the market earlier. So be sure to not discard those cards when they're flipped down by the Spy Master. Essentially, its ability is to flip them over and keep you from being able to discard them until you kill the Spy Master. So I did get a little bit of an advantage there, so definitely want to make mention of that. Now on the activation of the Spy Master, this one's unique because it came out during an event which told us to place its target on the capital. So essentially the Spy Master is just going to move twice to the capital and that's it. Now you might be wondering, well, that seems kind of odd and doesn't really, it's not that proactive or productive for the Spy Master. Normally that wouldn't be the case. It would actually have an alternative target other than the capital, but the event card specifically stated to head that direction. Remember again that even in its journey to the capital, it could easily run into enemies and be fighting them along the way in a longer game, or even in this game if things had panned out in that way. So just like that, the Spy Master has been activated fully and is done. And now it's time for the Coven to activate, and we know exactly where he's headed. At this point, we're going into a fierce battle against the Coven. Now, just before we go ahead and roll, and I feel really silly about this, I had planned to use this card during the actions phase for Syndra because this allows me to flip it and gain Assault for every Sword Sister. I only have one. I'm going to do this retroactively because I'm playing solo and it doesn't have any major gameplay impact. I completely missed it while explaining some things. So we're flipping this over, gaining Assault. That is the only Salt that Syndra has, and she has 2 Plunder. So the best case out of this is that I could use that Salt for this card, which I had planned to use originally, which could help me to, by paying Assault, flip a die to show a single skull. Could help me with the Coven or, anything else I'm dealing with, which would just be the Coven in this case. But the other benefit of having 3 resources in the scoring phase, I can convert those 3 resources into a victory point if I don't use the Salt. So that's kind of reason why it's important not to miss things. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and roll. This is the Archer pool that I have for mine. I have 2 Archers right there. And I also have the 1 that comes from the tower defenses. That gives me my 3. The enemy actually has 3, but I don't have enough dice to put there just yet until I make my roll. So let's go ahead and do my side of the attack. Okay, so lots of defense. The enemy's side of the attack is going to be... Okay, so we blocked and nothing happens. All right, so that is going to resolve the archery phase of things. Now, again, I could use the Salt and convert for a hit. Tempting to do so, but the VP point sounds even better. So I'm going to hold off on that. We're going to go into a clash now. We're now heading into the clash, a very exciting portion of the battle here. Let's talk about the dice pools in terms of what I pulled together. I have 2 Beastmasters, so that's a red die each. I have 2 Archers. I have 1 that's coming from the tower defenses, 1 coming from the wall defenses, and this is for the Sword Sister. So that's my pool. Enemy pools just strictly based off a threat level of 5. Let's do some rolling. Of course, if bolts happen for the enemies, this thing is going to mess with my feats and items. If I get a bolt, I can make use of Druid cards and all that fun stuff. So let's see how this goes, and hoping for good things here. This is going to be a massive, this is probably one of the bigger battles in the entire game so far. Okay, so we got ourselves a couple bolts and, 1 bolt and 3 hits. That's a little scary, but the good news is they didn't get any shields, so I should, fingers crossed, be able to rip through them, I hope. Okay, so that's actually pretty good. Holy, I was almost able to take it out in 1 hit. So at this point, what's going to happen is the bolt's going to trigger. It says flip all your feats and items without using any of them before damage once per combat. So right now, I'm flipping over everything that I have that way, which is a little unfortunate, but then I'm going to do some damage, and I'm going to take some damage too. Now, just before I show you the damage taken and remove dice for the next roll in the clash, gotta show you this one that hurts to have flip over right now because, again, it happens before damage is applied. I lose this card, which was a flip this to gain 1 shield for every Beastmaster here. That would have given me 2 shields on top of everything I rolled, which would have prevented, 2 damage from coming through. Instead, I'm taking 3 damage, so I do have to remove 3 units, and I'll probably kill off everything but the 2 Beastmasters. So that, my friends, was a substantial hit, but we still have 2 red dice for our 2 Beastmasters. We have our tower defenses and wall defenses, so we got 4 dice still going into this for defense side of things, and a white and a purple left for the enemy, so really weaken them. Let's go ahead and roll. At this point, bolts aren't really going to do too much for the Coven, but those skulls surely will. 2, okay, that's not good. Let's hopefully get some shields here, although being at the end of the game here, if I lose a lot, I just want to kill this thing, really, at the end of the day. Oh yeah, so we're going to take a hit, but we are far surpassing what we need in order to kill this thing. It says a fading memory, if destroyed, gain 4 VP, and every player gains their action points back, which at this point in the chapter track for chapter 2 does not matter. Overall, that was a really close battle, even with all the advantages that I had at my disposal with my defenses and the number of units I had there. The Coven almost took down the Haven there, but we gained the 4 VP, so we've jumped up the track. Both of my factions are ahead at this point, and at this point we're now going to be done the Nemesis phase as we've activated fully both of the cards. There was no chance for the Coven to activate again because, well, we killed it. So we're going to move right into the production phase. So based on the furthest right open space for Havens, we're going to gain that for production. So 3 salt, 1 food into our pool. On the red faction side of the equation, we are gaining a bit more because we had more Havens out. So we're getting a salt, a plunder, and 4 food added to our resource pool. Now we take a look at the board for the Havens that we have. We look underneath for any resources we gain. I'm going to be getting 1 of each type of resource for the 1 home hex for the white faction. Those are going in my pool. Taking a look at the 2 Havens that I have for the red faction, I'm going to gain 1 from each of the different resources for the home hex, and then an additional 2 for the tavern. So we have 3 food, 1 plunder, and 1 salt. And now, my friends, we move into final scoring for the game. The Emperor is going to score 1 for every hex with any garrisons, 1 for every legion in play, and 2 for every faction in the Imperial Graveyard. The Imperial Legion gains 8 victory points. We count this for every garrison. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 right there. 1 for every legion. 1 right there with the Spy Master. And no one was killed off from the Imperials, so a total of 8 VP. We now move to the Chaos Horde, and at this point we take a look at every curse in play. You'll notice 1 just showed up out of nowhere. That's because I should have placed it at the beginning in the first activation of the Coven before it went ahead and did its movement. Good thing I caught that because it's going to matter for scoring here. So we have a total of 5 curses in play, so 5 VP right there. We get 1 for, or they get 1 for every Horde in play. Thankfully we wiped those all out. And then 2 for every faction in the graveyard. And unfortunately they have red faction and white faction in the graveyard, so that is 4, so a total of 9 points. All right, so things are getting a little bit tense here. Let's see if we can pull this off. So now the players are going to score. We'll do, let's do the red faction first because that's the one we know is likely to hop over these 2. The white one I'm a little more scared of. So right now we're going to score 2 for each Haven in play for red, which is going to be 4 points right there. Then any special hexes we have Havens on, that would just be our home hex currently. So that's another one, so that's a total of 5. And then 1 to any player per 5 resources paid. I did allude to earlier that it was 3 to convert to a VP. That was a mistake on my part. It was a 5. So we're going to go ahead right now. I'm going to convert as many as I can. So 9 additional points for the red faction, and that comes from the 2 Havens at 4 points, the 1 special bonus on a tile with a Haven, which is additional victory points, so that's 5, and then we're cashing in based on our resources here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the extra 1 resource we have just kind of goes away. So that's a total of 9 points, bringing us up to 23. So we're good there. Now the question is, can the white faction get ahead of both of the enemy factions? And we need to be ahead of both of them. And that, my friends, is where we hit a wall. I only ended up getting 5 VP for the white faction based on scoring. I have 2 for each Haven. I've only got 1 Haven. For special hexes, is an additional 1 from the home Haven, so that's 3. And then I cashed in 2 points here based on resources. That's 5. That doesn't even get me to meet any of the enemy factions, but regardless, we didn't get ahead of both of them, so this ends up being a loss. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the showcase for Uprising Curse of the Last Emperor from Nemesis Games. I really hope this showcase helps you make an informed decision on whether or not this game is for you. I can tell you as a 4X game, this one had solo play built in from the ground up, and it was an awesome experience to be able to be a part of the prototype plays for this one and now see it in its final version. This is a fantastic solo game. Highly recommend this one. I'd also love to see you guys on the Rolling Solo Facebook community group. If you're not there, we have chats around solo gaming all the time. If you're not on Facebook, which is a-okay, we also have the Rolling Solo Discord as well, which is very active. And on top of that, we have a behind the scenes side of things with Patreon, where you can get early access to videos and also steer the channel in terms of what's coming up next, what characters I'm selecting in playthroughs. You also get a sneak peek at what's coming up in the current month in terms of work and beyond. So really hope you'll join us in any or all of those locations, and hope that this helped you all the way around. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.